Hey, Facebook family, YouTube subbies, what's up? Welcome to Sgt Dorsey Speaks. Tonight, you already know it's going down. It's going to be lit. What else do the kids say? Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I couldn't figure out, what I wanted to wear for you guys, so I went with the your agreement is not required for tonight. I was torn between that and, of course, all skinfolk and kinfolk, because you already know, family, today, as we speak, I've got kinfolk here. And so let me just make sure that we are good and broadcasting everywhere that I need to be broadcasting so that nobody misses out on a word. And then I'm going to bring in, oh, shoot. Hold on one sec. Give me one sec, family. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Had a little snafu right in the midst of all that. My doggone cell phone died, so now I've got to charge it back up real quick, or at least plug it into my remote charger. And I'm going to bring in our guests for tonight. I've got kinfolk with me, and we're going to be talking about the brouhaha over last weekend with my good buddy and dear new BFF, Sean Hannity, and all that was that craziness. And we'll be talking about some other things. You guys are going to want to pay attention, because I've got Sheriff Rochelle Bilal with me from Philadelphia, and we've got some, the Proud Boys. She's got a new name for them. I'll let her tell you what her pseudonym is for them as I bring them all on. So as the others join us, I will tell you who's here. So let me start off by introducing to you Dr. DeLacy Davis. You guys met him. I think he was my first guest on here when I started my conversations with folks who look like me and think like me and talk like me. And over the weeks, I've morphed into the real ones. And now I'm just calling it KINFOK Conversations.
Right. That's right.
I couldn't wear my kinfolk shirt because I got my your agreement is not required shirt tonight.
That's right. That's right.
Because we're gonna say some stuff, and they may or may not agree, and it's all good because we're not really here looking for a consensus. I've got Sheriff Rochelle Bilal here with me. You guys remember her from a few weeks ago, and the other Klan members from the NCLEOJ, National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice Reform and Accountability, will be coming in one by one. You know how we do it, family. It's kinfolk, so we working on CP time. They're going to be sliding their way in here one by one, and as they do, I will bring them on. So let me, again, try to make sure that I'm going public on my Facebook pages. For those of you who are on Facebook, be sure to share this on your timeline. And for my guests, if you want to share this on your Facebook page as well, you can do it from my public page, Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Oh, Jesus. The hologram is looking for the link.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy. Hang on. We got some folks with some we're not all real tech savvy. So you guys are going to have to just bear with us a little bit. I've got to resend, as I'm speaking to you, the link to a couple of people. So as I do that, I'm going to step away for a sec. And I want you, Dr. DeLacy, to tell everybody what you've been up to since we were here last.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, family. I'm honored to be here with my sisters, retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, and certainly my sister, Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. We've been doing a whole bunch of work since we were here last. We're doing work in the community. We're working with the law enforcement agencies. We're helping the community to organize and talk about in a meaningful way to the community what police reform looks like, understanding what people mean when they say defund the police. We're certainly not talking about, in some of our communities, zeroing out the budget and having no police, because Pookie Peaches and Ray Ray and them hoping that we defund the police, Sheriff Bilal, so they can just go crazy in the community. So we're not really talking about that in some places, while others are. And we respect all of it. We just need to have a conversation around it in a meaningful way. Additionally, I've been doing research articles and research around what it's like to be on these front lines. I've been on the front lines with Sgt Dorsey. I've been on the front lines with Sheriff Bilal, and we're continuing to do this work on behalf of our people. And I think that's an important piece. So, and obviously our colleagues from NCL EOJ, I like to call it NCLEO 4J, but they call it NCLEO NCL EOJ. And that's kind of where I am. So, Sheriff Bilal, what's going on in your world?
Still standing. First of all, thank you. I'm definitely right here with my sister, Cheryl Dorsey, so that people think that she don't have backup. She got plenty of backup. And so we are here to let y'all know she got plenty of backup. Basically, law enforcement professionals, whether retired or active, we're here to support her, and we will come anywhere. Let me say that again. Come closer. We will come anywhere in support of her. So you can come at her if you want to. So in Philadelphia, we've been doing what we do here, working with the community, building those bridges between law enforcement and our community, educating my deputy sheriffs on how to be more professional and how to work with communities and how to work with people, and just basically out there doing what we do. COVID shut down a lot of places, but we wasn't shut down. And so we made sure that our professionals got out in the community to help everyone wherever we can. We fitted in where we could get in. And basically we continue to do that up till today. We had a food giveaway that we gave every 2 weeks. We did over about 11,000 boxes of food to different parts of the areas of the community, because people are hurting. And say our job is to get in where we fit in. And so that's what we've been getting in to do. Just do what we do.
And I see for our sister, we got our brothers coming in. So we got New Jersey represented. We have Pennsylvania represented. We have Missouri represented. We have New York represented. So Minister Vernon Wells, while our sister's still doing her thing, tell us what you're doing, why you're here, and what does it mean for you to be here and defending our sister, letting them know that there are brothers and sisters around the country committed to defending our sister and her view of the world.
I just want to say it's great to be here on this show, and to see Rochelle. I want to congratulate her on her sheriff. I can see you virtually. It's good to see the family, and it was notified to me that somebody was messing with somebody in our family, and so up here in New York, as we represent an organization called 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement and part of this national coalition, we are here to let her know and let everybody know that hands be off of our sister, retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, because she's dealt from a perspective of truth. As far as I also represent the African village of New York City, and everyone told me about what was happening with retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, and it was alarming. So without a doubt, I am here, and without anything further ado, we'll do whatever they can as far as dealing with white supremacy, because number one, if everybody saw on Tuesday the clown that was performing that is their president, it's obvious that it's just a matter of so many clowns that are getting. Those are the clowns that follow him, and and what he does is just justify who he is by what he does, and they continue on. So we're here to stand for.
Thank you, brother. And let me just move over to one more out of New York. If I see him, I know he's a hologram, but I think he's popped up. So I see our brother Noel Leader also coming strong out of New York. So Noel, just tell everybody why you're here.
There we go.
Hey,
my brother.
Hotep, brother.
I'm sorry. I sent our sister a message asking for the link. And then I'm sorry, Hotep, everybody, Sister Sheriff. Congratulations to our sister Sheriff. and from Philadelphia, Rochelle, and brother Hudson, Riddick, of course, Vernon. What was the question, my brother?
The question is, and I'm just doing the introduction before I give it back to our sister sergeant. But the question was, let's just let the audience know why you're here, because we're here. We know we're here to defend, but let them know why you're here and what it means to you to be here in support of our sister Cheryl Dorsey.
Okay, well, you know, in history past, many spokespersons that spoke on behalf of our community have been attacked. Sometimes they've been all alone when they've been attacked, and particularly for speaking the truth. So we wanted to make it clear to whomever would come against our sister for speaking her truth and our truth, that she has support, and we will do whatever we have to do to support our sister, be it verbally, mentally, or physically. We've been duly trained in all areas of defense, and it's important that those individuals who may come after our sister for speaking her and our truth and speaking what I consider the truth, have the nerve, the gall, and the audacity to come against her. So we just want it to be known publicly that she has our full support. We want her to know, and we want others to know.
Thank you, brother. And then my final introduction before I give the mic back is the brother that actually, one of the brothers that brought all of us together from across the country, who several years ago thought it not robbery to come up with an organization named the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability, representing the Midwest, but convincing enough that we on the East Coast, the West Coast, and those in the North and the South said we will come together collectively, and we would come to DC with you and do this work, and we've continued to do it, none other than our brother Reddick Hudson.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Well, all love all the way around, man. I appreciate you for that lift. And it's so good to see all of you in the space that we're in right now, as Brother Leader just alluded to, man. You know, the times that we're living in require our response on behalf of our sister Cheryl Dorsey. We know she's a champion for the people. We know she's going to tell the truth and speak the truth in every circumstance, no matter what she is. When you happen to land on Fox News, a propaganda bullshit site for white supremacists and their ilk and supporters who have no other purpose than to promote ignorance and white supremacy, I knew without having seen the broadcast that Cheryl was going to stand for what's right in that space. And for somebody like a Sean Hannity to come at our sister, which is one of the reasons we've come here today, I think even more broadly, we can talk about what our collective role needs to be in the time that we face right now, where our very existence is being threatened from the top. But Hannity is nothing but a mouthpiece for ignorance and bullshit. And he picked the wrong one when he picked Sgt Dorsey to come after, because he thought he had the only platform. He thought he had the only ability to reach people with a message and with information that they need to respond when we see sisters like Cheryl or Rochelle Bilal there in Philadelphia or here in St. Louis. I could talk for the whole show about Kim Gardner and how they come at her, our circuit attorney here, strong sister standing for the community. So collectively, we know what time it is, and I couldn't have put it any better than you did, Brother Leader. We have every ability to defend ourselves in every circumstance. This is one platform where you will see over the course of this evening where we excel.
Okay, Riddick.
Well, none other than our sister.
Appreciate that. And so, you know, we want to just let those of you who are here in my virtual kinfolk that we have work that we have been doing all over the nation, and there are things that are going on right now specific to some of you. And I want to allow Sister Bilal to talk about the pseudonym that she's given for that group that little Tink Tink shouted out the other day, because they are right now thinking about or coming to Philly for reasons that are untoward. And so to my Philly kinfolk, you guys need to know what's about to go down and how to combat it. You have options, you have choices, and you have folks who are going to have your back, who look like you, who carry what they carry and have a word for you. So Sister Bilal, talk about that group.
We are a free nation here, first of all. And Philadelphia, you can vote when you want to and how you want to here in this city. We will not be intimidated by anybody. We don't care if that blank, what did Bill Maher call him, that orangutan, tell you what you think you can probably try to do in this city. First of all, he lied. They weren't poll watchers. They were just there. And if you come in there and you're not a resource and you don't live in the city, you better need to stay home. Trust me. It's not a place for you to come and try to intimidate anybody, because we will not be intimidated, especially by those po' boys. Ain't that their name? Po' boys?
That's the new name.
Po' boys, don't come here. Don't even bother to try to attempt to intimidate anybody. Go home. Go home and wait for what that orangutan said for you to say or do for you to do. But don't bring it here. In Philadelphia, we don't have a problem with doing our job and making sure everybody is treated fairly and everybody has the right to vote. We're not scared of y'all. We just saying.
Is there a number or something, Sheriff Bilal, where folks can call if they have concerns, either right now or as we get closer to the election or on election day even?
There's a lot of numbers. I'll have to get you
You
those.
come back
Okay.
and they can see you, okay? Go ahead, I cut the camera. Come here.
Look at Vernon. Turn your mic off, Vernon. We hear you. So
We're gonna have to give him protocol for virtual meetings, right?
Yes.
We will give out those numbers at the end as to where you can call if you're running into any situation dealing with voting in the city. But basically, you can go on vote, PA Vote or PhillyVote.com. PhillyVote.com will tell you where all the resource locations are if you want to vote early. If you have any problem at your polling place, and trust me, my deputy sheriffs will be out there to ensure, the Philadelphia Police Department will be out there to ensure that nobody attempts to intimidate anybody and that they're free to come and go as they please. And if you do, bring your bail money with you, because we're not taking it.
Let me back up a little bit and let's talk a little bit about how this whole brouhaha got started on last week with the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron and his faux press conference, if you will, with regards to justice, that non-indictment in the case of Breonna Taylor. Now, we know that there were a lot of representations that were made on last week, and that was specifically what I spoke to. And I say, I know what I know. And now we know, because evidence has been dribbling out, that he lied during his press conference. He said that the officer who was shot, Sergeant Mattingly, was shot by a 9mm weapon, and that the officers carry Glocks. It's been reported that the one who was fired, the sacrificial lamb, Hankerson, actually carried a 9mm. And so, you know, there's some banter back and forth about maybe Mattingly was shot by friendly fire, because we know that Hankerson ran around the building and fired into the good white people's apartment in number 3. And maybe one of those rounds went through and hit Mattingly in the leg, because I'm of the opinion that if what the DA was, the AG was saying is true, that officers announced, and you guys know, in the service of a legitimate search warrant, and the occupant of that resident fires back, he'd be facing 3 counts of attempted murder right now. What say each of you?
I'm going to take it a step further, Cheryl, because as you pointed out, he lied. But apparently that's not the only thing he lied about. And I'm sure all of you are aware that one of the grand jurors is seeking a suit to release the report. Everybody's calling for the release of the full report because it's come out that he never instructed the grand jury relative to a murder charge, period. But then he tried to use language that made it appear that the grand jury had made a decision about murder when it was never presented to them as an option. So again, he lied to the core of the case. And forensically, you know, there's so much confusion and misdirection going on, you can't help but think that this is another example of justice denied because the coordinated efforts of people on the inside of our system who never value Black bodies enough to make sure that we see equal justice under the law. So you were on point in your criticism.
I say you was more than on point, because just like you said, Skinfolk not always your kinfolk. And he definitely is not a kinfolk, because he stood up there and had a press conference and lied, blatantly lied. So he's a part of the Trump era of liars. Anybody that speaks for that man and stands up there in his glory are liars, and he's one of them. First of all, there is no way a grand jury would not have indicted those officers. There was no way. And for the way he went in and tried to perpetrate that nobody killed Breonna, nobody, somebody killed her. The bullets that they shot in that house went into that body. And then you're going to take and see, as an investigator, here's the real crutch of this. You got 12 other people said they ain't heard nothing. Then you got one guy said he didn't heard nothing from the beginning. And now all of a sudden he heard something. And you go by that one individual, you really have lost your credibility as a prosecutor. You should not be able to do anything in that area anymore. They need to recall his behind. Because first of all, his investigative technique, whatever he called himself doing, is a lie. Nobody takes one person's doubtful word and then said they did it, and 12 other people that said there was nothing, they didn't hear anybody announce themselves, and you all of a sudden believe him as he was the gospel truth. Give me a break, please. No investigator in the country would have taken that as to be gospel truth right there. And so therefore, the no-knock warrant, they did it. They didn't knock. They busted in that house, and that brother was in there, tried to defend his household by shooting a warning shot, and they killed the female, the beautiful Breonna Taylor, because they didn't want to do their job properly. And so they all should be charged. And I'm glad. See, a lot of time God does certain things. And so I'm glad that everything is trickling out. Basically, what you stated is now coming full circle as the truth comes out. Now, all of them talking that mess, what are you going to say when they come back with the truth? And now you're going to sit looking stupid because you want to defend somebody because they your kinfolk, because he ain't ours.
And here's the other piece of it, and I'm going to take another angle of this. If you announced that you were the police, then why did you apply for a no-knock warrant?
Right.
And if you're going to announce that you were the police, then you wouldn't need a no-knock warrant. You just say, hello, let me in. But that's the first part. The second piece is, because some folks have taken issue with me, and some law enforcement officers have taken issue with me, because I said that Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal should simply be quiet, because they were saying that the Breonna Taylor case should not be lumped in with the George Floyd case and the Jacob Blake case, because it's a different kind of case because somebody shot. And what I said is, as a firearms instructor, we teach target recognition and target acquisition. So just because there's a shot coming through the door does not give you unfettered license to unload 22 rounds in that way, in that direction, hit an unarmed victim, and then you get to say, because you're in fear of losing your life, you fired 22 times and hit the wrong person. And so what I said to my law enforcement colleagues is, one, you have to first recognize who and what you're shooting at. That's number one. Then you have to acquire the target and shoot at it. And because only one shot was fired from inside the apartment, after firing the first two shots, when did you realize that no one was shooting back? No one. So who's supposed to be responsible for 22 rounds at people who are not shooting at you, and you hit an innocent party? That's the issue. And so my position was, it's all terrible. And more importantly, I believe because it's a black female involved, folks want to minimize and they want to push it off the table, because we generally, when black women are killed by the police, their story doesn't make the front page, and it definitely doesn't stay there long enough to defend them.
Well, I'll sum up everybody's point because everyone made excellent points. I had a problem with his initial, I'm talking about Attorney General Cameron, When he first opened up his press conference, he just said, we're not going to talk about the warrant. We didn't look at the warrant. The warrant, which brought the officers there, there's a whole lot of questions whether or not the officer who applied for the warrant perjured himself. And some said lied, as it relates to the mail inspector claiming that they had delivered drugs to that apartment on the previous date. The mail inspector said they didn't tell the officer that. Not only did they not tell him that, but the mail inspector said that we told him we've never delivered drugs, problematic mail to that particular apartment. So from its inception, this is problematic. Now, for whatever reason, I don't know why the Attorney General didn't look at the area of the search of the no-knock warrant, but that's problematic. Now it's coming out that the sergeant who was shot, he was told that there was never any delivery, allegedly. You know, we're going to see that he was one of the individuals. This is coming from the postal inspector, who stated that he informed more than the officer who applied for the warrant, but the sergeant as well, that according to them, they had no knowledge of any drugs being delivered to that particular apartment. As Sean stated earlier, the ballistics results have come back. During his press conference, the Attorney General said that her boyfriend shot the sergeant. Now, the ballistic results have come back, and they say they cannot determine whose gun, fired the round that entered into sergeant. Now, not only did the officer who was arrested have a 9mm, but I've heard, according to one of the attorneys, that the officer who dragged the sergeant out of the apartment, he also had a 9mm, and it might have been a result of friendly fire. So we have two officers who might have shot the sergeant. But what we can say is there's no definitive conclusion that her boyfriend did shoot him. And also, as you stated earlier, 12 residents said they never heard police announce themselves. One person in this, he said no. And then I heard a while later, he came back and said, yes, we don't know what kind of pressure he might have been under. But be it as it may, if you want to make a presentation to the grand jury, all of that should have been, if you decide to include this one individual, the information from the 12 residents and the fact that he changed his initial statement should have been presented. And also, as it relates to video camera, one officer had a camera. I don't know. They said that he might have not been there. One officer had the face. So it didn't pass the smell test to those of us who are law enforcement officers. So Cheryl, he was 100% correct, pointing criticism to this Attorney General. Unfortunately, there's pressure to release grand jury minutes so we can hear what he presented. Of course, one of the jurors is saying, he tried to say that the jury decided not to indict these police officers, but the jurors are saying you never made a presentation for us to indict those two police officers. Don't put it on us, So, fortunately, he's going to be forced to reveal what was stated in the so-called private presentation to the grand jury. We're all going to be able to see, what kind of presentation that he made, because as it was stated earlier, normally the grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. And whenever there's not an indictment in the grand jury, the only reason why there's not an indictment is because the district attorney or the prosecutor doesn't want an indictment. So we're going to see a lot when this comes forward. But Cheryl, you was right on point, because everybody was claiming that, see, I told you so. But you stood back and you were very critical and very poignant in pointing out the inconsistencies in his press conference.
Sure. Can I just tag a couple of quick tight points on that? You can verify this for me, because you may have more knowledge about. I think, to Noel's point, the warrant, which was central to everything that has happened, really, because I believe, and this is what I'm asking you, Cheryl, after I make a second point, that the target of the warrant was her ex-boyfriend, who was already in custody at the time they entered Breonna's apartment. They already had the target of the warrant, is my understanding. And if that's the case, they need to get ready to pay for what they've done. To your point, Dr. Davis, for our brothers Shaquille and Charles Barkley, I would say to them, on a no-knock warrant, brother, don't lose your common sense. It would be my advice, my sound advice to anybody in this audience, that if somebody kicks in your house in the middle of the night unannounced, shoot first and ask questions later. Don't lose your common sense, man. You talk about he shot, of course he shot. Somebody kicked in his home and was a threat to the life of himself and his woman. So that really is a non-factor when you talk about how it may be different than other cases. It is consistent with other cases in that a fouled up process has resulted in the death of a Black woman or man, and justice is nowhere to be found when it comes to the law enforcement response.
Let me ask him, because I got DeLacy, because you're a firearms instructor, and to my knowledge, every time there's a bullet shot out of a gun, there are specific grooves in that bullet or casing that points to that specific gun that it comes out of. And I thought, to my understanding, that the FBI concluded, but he decided not to take their conclusion because he thought he was smarter than the FBI. So I'm trying to figure out how you cannot identify the gun and the bullet, because they all come from a specific gun and they have a specific group that matches up to that gun that is coming from. So help me out with that, because I'm trying to figure.
It's my understanding that there's a stippling that comes out from the gun, the bullet coming through the gun, that actually matches the two, unless the bullet is so damaged that you can't read it and match it up. However, they didn't say that was the case. They're simply saying they can't determine which gun it came from. And so that's a nice way of saying, well, maybe we didn't compare because we don't want to know. They didn't say who the expert was that took a look at it. They didn't say what lab they sent it to. They didn't say if they sent it to the regular lab, and you just mentioned they said they didn't use the FBI that's better equipped than any of the local government in terms of the technology. So they may not want to know, right? So because I would have been listening for, well, the bullet was so badly damaged that we couldn't tell, or we didn't recover the bullet in the body. It went all the way through the officer, or went all the way through Breonna Taylor, whomever they're trying to match up the bullet to whomever's gun. And they didn't do that. So clearly they don't want to know the answer from my vantage point. And I think that's also why they didn't want to release the grand jury information, because there was an effort to cover up some of this and to blame it on the jurors rather than own up to the fact that they never presented it in a way that would have led to it at least going to a trial. Because even when officers go to trial, they rarely are convicted. Rarely.
Could I say real quick that the Attorney General attempted to say that he assumed, or he had this strong opinion that the round came from her boyfriend, because he claims that the angles of the officer who was indicted and arrested couldn't go through there. But the officer, when he gave an explanation of why he fired, he said he see muzzle flash. Now, of course, if her boyfriend fired and they alleged he was firing towards the door, and the officer who got arrested was behind the scene and fired randomly, the only muzzle flash he could have seen, if he seen muzzle flash, could have been the other officer. So if he can see they muzzle flash, then definitely his round into one of the officers that were firing.
The plot thickens here. The plot thickens.
And so, he was very cagey. AG Cameron was very cagey in his response. He was very specific about the things that would tend to lead you down the path that he wanted you to go. And then when the questions got pointed about, well, what about, did you present manslaughter to the jury? And at that point, everything is secret. And, I can't really talk about it because I don't want to taint the criminal process that is to be held for Brett Hankison, when he knew all along what he was saying was intellectually dishonest. And I'm being kind. He flat out lied out of his ass. And he said what he had to say to quiet the natives in the moment. And so now that he's being compelled to put forth this information, because it's said that, we all have about 48 hours before we forget what we're doing and move on to the next thing. He's hoping, I would imagine, that we will move on. There's nothing more to see, because after all, the family has been compensated. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I have a problem with the fact that, all of the leverage that they may have had, Ben Crump, the Lollipop Guild, to the family who knows, he's not my favorite person. You can't really demand anything at this point, dude. You got a $12 million check. The family agreed, as did the police, that there was no admission of wrongdoing. So how can they really leverage? What can be done at this point? Could they present the evidence for real to a grand jury? What happens to get what looks like a modicum of justice in the murder of Breonna Taylor?
let me say this, and I'm trying to really be kind, because I know lawsuits come up, and people are compensated. But I have to look at this angle that came from that. I know that there was a African American or Jamaican type police officer that shot a white woman. Her settlement was
Muhammad Noor.
Muhammad Noor,
Minnesota,
Minneapolis,
and her settlement was $55 million.
And he went to prison.
Yeah, she got 20 million.
Oh, she got 20 million.
And he got 12 and a half years.
Yeah,
he got 12 and a half years, and she got $20 million, and they settled for Breonna at 12. And I don't. This is not about the family, but it still lessens us as African Americans. If we are killed, we are cheaper than anybody anywhere else when it comes down to settlements like this. And what you call them, the crumpet, whatever. As
I
far
call
as
them the lollipop guild. You're talking about Trump.
Yes. And he quickly to settle things, and then the next week come out with this. I am a little suspect as to how that happened, but I'm just bewildered on this. We are all law enforcement professionals. We all know the status of how to do an investigation. And yet you try to insult our intelligence by standing up there perpetrating something that shouldn't have been.
So can I just interrupt for a second to let you know that Facebook is blocking us all over. People are reaching out and they're showing posts where it's saying that this has been blocked. One of them said, all I did was point somebody to the link, and it says that the owner has removed your comment. I'm like, who's the owner? All I said is she's on now. Lord, so y'all are killing it out there because they don't want anybody to see us.
Let me go to your point, Cheryl, as it relates to Crump. See, what our people have to understand is Crump is not our attorney. He's their attorney. He gets allowed to practice these, to jump in front of these civil cases all around the country. And it's a strategic mistake to settle these civil cases prematurely. The primary objective should be justice. Of course, the family deserves compensation because they've been done a wrong. But when you prematurely settle the case, as you stated, Cheryl, you nuffle yourself. If there's no criminal prosecution, then there's a lot of information that a family can earn out of a civil jurisdiction. And I always say, ask Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is in jail today for statements that he made in a civil proceeding. Attorney has an opportunity to depose police officers in a civil proceeding, and sometimes you get them to say things that you can take to a district attorney and say, listen, this guy ought to be prosecuted criminally because he made this particular statement. But when you settle a case civilly, you lose that objective. Like I said, Bill Cosby is in jail not for statements that he made in a criminal jurisdiction. He made statements in the civil jurisdiction, which the district attorney then picked up on and prosecuted him. So Crump knows this. That's why he has these private meetings, I believe, with the district attorneys all over the country and say, listen, I want no problem. I'm going to tell them to denunciate violence and Black Lives Matter protests. I'm going to tell them to stand down and call for peace. And then I'm going to tell them to settle as soon as possible. If you look at Crump's history in all of these cases, he never deposes police officers. He never gets the opportunity to critique the jurisdiction, the agency for their paperwork in the civil jurisdiction. And I think that's not an error. It's intentional on his behalf because he's on a good guy list for prosecutors and law enforcement agencies all around the country. They very rarely have ever criticized him because he's their guy. And you can lump Sandy Rubenstein and Reverend Sharpton along with him as well. They never depose police officers and they never call for economic sanctions or boycotts. They're not our people. They bark loud and they have the appearance of being aggressive and dogmatic, calls for justice, but no, don't trust them. I don't trust them.
Let me take a moment and just welcome Brother Julian Harper, who has just joined us, retired NYPD Lieutenant Julian Harper. You met him a few weeks ago. And so, Julian, you've been able to hear, we're just kind of chopping it up about the non-indictment that was presented, cherry-picked evidence presented to the grand jury on last week in the case of Breonna Taylor, and how, if at all, there Is there a do-over? Is it possible? Can another jury be impaneled to hear that information that should have been given with regards to the use of deadly force, unnecessary deadly force? Can we have another jury reconsider, or is it a done deal? That's kind of where we are, and that's what we're going over. So please.
Well, let me just tell you my thoughts on that. Well, you know, Noel and I, you know, we go back and forth and we chop it up all the time. So a lot of our positions are even killed. But when you talk about this being re-prosecuted, now remember, 2 of the officers, as stated by one of the jurists, had not even been presented to the grand jury for a possibility of an indictment. So I believe that in that instance, in that case, that the information can be given to the grand jury relative to the roles that these 2 officers played. Now, they may be able to include the totality of the incident, and that means including the officer who they have the lesser charges on. But I think that they can represent at least some of the information that was recovered by the prosecuting attorney's office to a grand jury again.
Who would be the one to do it? Would it be Cameron? Because we already know we can't trust him. So is there somebody else? I mean, he's the AG for the state. You can't get any higher than that. And there's not an underling, I would imagine, that could say, oh, AG, I got this. So is that even real? Is it possible?
Well, see, that's why we always talk about having an outside prosecuting attorney handle these particular cases. Because once there's a relationship between law enforcement and the prosecution attorney, there's definitely going to be a problem. When we talk about this incestuous relationship, they operate from a position to ensure that the police department is protected. We need an outside entity. It has no relationship with the acting police agency to prosecute this case.
I'm in agreement with that. And so at this point, I guess the people there need to start calling for an outside prosecutor to basically pick this up, because what they had there failed them. And if they need to recall him, whatever mechanism they need to put together, because he has failed them. He has failed Breonna Taylor family. He has failed people in that community. He failed. He get all S. Somebody needs to call for something up in there, because what he did as law enforcement professionals, we are ashamed of.
And you know what, Sergeant Dorsey, it would not be as easy for the AG in Kentucky or the AG anywhere to do what they do without the cover that media provides, that people like Sean Hannity and Fox News and that network and all those apologists for police criminality provide. If you had all of these voices lined up in the run up to the presentation of this case, presented consistently across the country, I think you would start to see some very different outcomes. People haven't heard law enforcement voices like these in one space very often to tell the truth about why a case is so deeply flawed and why an AG's decision is just bullshit. And they need to hear that.
And you know, I would imagine that now that the family has signed on the dotted line for $12 million, they pretty much muffled the mother. You know, just like anything else, it's difficult, or if not impossible, for someone else to speak on behalf of the victim, right? And now that mom has been silenced, if you will, who could really carry the charge to say, no, we need a do-over, and we need somebody, not this jackass Cameron. We don't need another black face to get up here and say some stuff to placate us and calm us down and try to convince us that a thing is not a thing. Could community pressure and enough of it be applied to really bring about a real look at this case from another grand jury, or no?
I think it would be difficult in light of the circumstances, because the settlement is already on the table. I think it would be difficult absent new evidence, because to my knowledge, that is classically the way that a case can be represented, with the discovery of new, previously undisclosed evidence that goes to the nature of the crime and guilt or innocence. So, you know, it's going to be a challenge. I think more broadly, justice for Breonna and all the other people that we've seen victimized this way is going to ultimately come from people like us and the community together, remaking this racist system from the bottom up, working to help pass legislation and policy to make the kinds of changes that would put an independent prosecutor in place in cases like this across the board, that would call for real accountability for police officers that violate our human rights and civil rights. And that's the work of the movement that I see right now, where people who are from the law enforcement community, especially Black people, especially people from marginalized communities, LGBTQ, religiously marginalized communities across the board. If you're in this space, now is our time to take the fight to these people, because it's going to be a fight. You know, the resistance is going to come from police unions all across the country. Classically, there in New York City with Pat Lynch, with his ignorant ass. We got an even stupider bastard here in St. Louis, Jeff Rorter, and police union bosses across the country are going to lead the fight against the kinds of reforms that are now required to remake a system from the bottom up that's institutionally racist at its foundation. The work of justice for Breonna is ours and the communities. And I think, you know, this is a time for us to really come to the table and do some of that work.
And you know, definitely there could be further, prosecution of these police officers. I mean, if you heard State Attorney General Daniel Cameron, when he just flippantly, and a lot of people probably didn't catch it, said, listen, we're not going to talk about the warrant because other jurisdictions are looking at that. So there's definitely, of course, the feds, the FBI is allegedly supposed to be looking into, some violations. These officers have never been, as Julian stated earlier, charged with any crime as of yet, to our knowledge. Now we're waiting for the grand jury, the presentation that he made to the grand jury. So there's no double jeopardy involved in this. As far as we know, these officers have never been charged with any crime. They got a pass by the state attorney general, and so if, of course, we have no confidence, as Julian stated, in the incestuous relationship between the district attorney. But to Reddick's point, man, this is why we call for criminal justice reform, not only police reform, but the entire system is racist to the core, unfair. And when you look at cases like this, which is a national and international story, but yet and still, the state attorney general would commit so many unprecedented flaws in his presentation and his investigation that took forever. That beckons the need for the criminal system of injustice to be reformed. But yes, these officers, they can still be indicted. They can still be, a prosecutor make a presentation before a jury, because that hasn't happened to our knowledge as of yet.
Right, and it would just be a matter of who, because we know that if they're looking outside of Kentucky, Barr, he's not going to do anything, and he's not shown that he has any appetite under this current administration to do anything that even looks like justice for Black folks. So I think, again, the Attorney General Daniel Cameron, Skinfolk man, is being intellectually dishonest when he pretends like there's something else that could come. Hold up, Negroes. Wait, listen, watch what I tell you. There's another investigation that's ensuing. It's over. It's a wrap. It's done.
One of the things that we got to remember when we talk about an independent prosecutor, we have to look at qualified investigators as well. A lot of these departments have, and they utilize their own members to conduct the investigation. And a lot of times during the interview, they try to sway the position and the opinion of some of the people that they're interviewing. As we learned in the Breonna Taylor case, they initially had, let's say, I think it was 11 people who said that they heard, when they didn't hear anyone say police or announcement of the police. But then they found one person to say that he heard the officers announce themselves. Now, did he initially say that? Well, I understand he initially said he didn't hear it. But during the investigation, as they continued to press, they convinced, or possibly convinced him to say that he did hear the police. You have to be very careful about who conduct these investigations as well.
Someone was asking about whether or not there was actually a no-knock warrant. It was a no-knock warrant that they obtained, and I had heard or read somewhere that it had been obtained months earlier, and the way that they obtained it was by judge shopping. And so police officers are savvy, and they know that if they go to a particular judge with a set of facts, that the judge may not issue that warrant. And so it was reported that there was some judge shopping going on to get this warrant issued in the first place. And that's why when the Attorney General said that the officers announced, I don't believe it, well, because he's a liar, but I don't believe it because it was a no-knock warrant that was served at 1 a.m. in the morning. And read it to your point much earlier, the boyfriend was in custody. I think he had been arrested about 12 hours prior to the service of this search warrant at 1 a.m. in the morning. So what was the point? What were they looking for? And I also heard Cameron say during his press conference that I think ultimately, if he didn't say it, I read it somewhere, that ultimately a search was never even conducted. So you got a no-knock warrant for a house. You don't no-knock, you claim to announce, and then you don't even execute the damn thing and search or anything.
I always thought, and it may be in this city, that if you get a warrant of that magnitude, you got to serve it within a certain matter of time. That means you can't go get it in January and hold it off till September in order to serve it. You talk, that's a search warrant. Search warrants are supposed to be served in a certain period of time. You can't hold them forever. And if you don't serve it, you have to go back to get it renewed or get it again, or it's a dead warrant. So if you got a search warrant for a property and help me out, y'all. Get it in January and then turn around and serve it in May or June, like it's an arrest warrant. You got a search warrant to go in a house. So how is that? Certainly, some of these things are not clear here.
Yeah, they do become stale. And also, I mean, even if it's not the policy of that department, it just makes good sense. I mean, on LAPD, and you guys tell me on your departments, somebody needs to have eyes on that location. Somebody should have been involved in monitoring what was going on moments before, hours before, days before. You can't just go get a warrant and then just decide, and then you send, according to them, 3 people who don't know nothing about nothing, who just happen to be in roll call on the day, and they say, hey, you 3 jackasses, you go over there at 1 o'clock in the morning. We'll be done by then. We'll be booking and property and evidence and suspects in custody that we get from the other locations. But at 1 o'clock, you go over there and just fuck it, just 40 shots through the front door, and we'll figure out why later. It makes no sense. It's offensive, and it's problematic for me that now we are left with this. Why? Well, because the Lollipop Guild were doing the dance of 1,000 goddamn nights when they knew the $12 million was on the table. And of course, a family is hurting and grieving, and they don't know, and they're trusting their attorneys. And I get that Crump is civil and not criminal. We all know what kind of law he practices, but families are trusting him to give them good information. How about if you tell the family, well, listen, I'm going to get you a chunk of change, but before we do that, let's make sure we get real policy change. Let's make sure we get at least a conviction, not a charge for one of the officers. Let's not let them give us a check without a charge connected to it. And he didn't do that. And that, for me, is problematic.
And let me add something else, Reddick. According with this warrant, in my city, you have to show due diligence. That if you got that warrant in January, and let's say it was a arrest warrant, you got to show due diligence in that warrant. That means you have to go. You have to show you tried to serve it this day. You tried to serve it that day. You have to show that you did input into a computer to find out if the person is still in jail or not in jail, or he done moved to Mexico. You have to do due diligence. So you serve a warrant. You haven't searched any database to find out if the person is in custody or not in custody for you to even go to a property. See, all of this does not make good cop sense. Good cops do their due diligence. They search, they check, they recheck before they even go out. So this does not make any good law enforcement sense.
Well, in New York, there's a two-pronged test. You have to make sure that the information is valid, and you have to make sure that the person that you're looking for is the person who is in that location. So I can't imagine you did a two-pronged test. before the search warrant is even applied for and signed by a judge, these two tests have to be done. And then after you get the search warrant, you have to verify that your information is accurate. Either A, buy, you have to go out and make another buy, or you have to make another observation. So I can't imagine how with the time frame that elapsed by the time from the time they get to the warrant, the time they execute, this work is done.
Let me change the subject a little bit. Go ahead, Noel, and then I'll
point real quick. And that's why I said from the outset, when it caught my attention because I was waiting when the Attorney General began his discussion to articulate about his investigation. I wanted to hear what he had to say about that warrant, the application to the judge about that warrant, but he just dismissed it. He said somebody else is going to look into that. And that's all these questions that we asked about the warrant, he should have discussed, or he should at least investigated. And to your final point, Cheryl, when you mentioned about the attorney, even though a civil attorney cannot bring charges against a police officer during a civil jurisdiction, he can put that officer on a hot seat and make all of them officers explain exactly what they did, as it relates to the warrant, as it relates to the interest, who fired what, he can really put them on that hot seat. So that's why, to all of our point, it's so important for the civil attorney to hold back, because although he cannot bring criminal charges against the police officers, he can definitely put all of them on a hot seat and extract a whole lot of information. Thus far, I don't even think the officers have made a statement. And if nobody else prosecutes, these officers are never going to have to make a statement, never going to have to explain themselves, never going to have to explain what they did, who applied for the warrant, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely a bad strategic move by the Attorney Crump. And he does it all over the country.
Someone is asking Dr. Davis, can you please offer an alternative conclusion based on your experience, what went down here? And I'm not sure what they mean by alternative conclusion. Mr. Toure, if you want to explain that question, I'll come back to it and have Dr. DeLacy Davis answer that. But let me just switch reels real quick, because I want to talk a little bit about Lil Tink Tink. That's my name for that guy in the White House, and these po' boys, as you call them, Sheriff, and the stand back and stand by. What do you guys think about that? What does that mean to you when you hear it? And more importantly, what do we need to be doing about it?
So that's a dog whistle. And what that means is that's telling folks that we're all down. I don't need you to jump loose yet, but I want you to stand by until I give you the signal. What should have been happening 8 months, 12 months, 3.5 years ago was that Black folks should have been doing what other folks are doing. And that is fortifying their homes, preparing to protect their community and their families. My brother is out on the West Coast, and I used to tell him, listen, man, I think that you should at least have a firearm in the house because everybody else has one. And as you've seen the reports from the FBI and the Homeland Security folks, is that the greatest threat to this country right now is domestic terrorism from white supremacist organizations. And he sent a message to at least the po' boys, as the sheriff says, to tell them stand back and stand by. He didn't say I denounce you. I don't want anything from you. I don't want your endorsement. I don't want to be affiliated with you. He sent them a very clear signal, a whistle that went through a bullhorn. And so that's what it says to me, but that's what I suspected. And I'll listen to what my colleagues think about that.
They have been preparing for a race-wide war for a minute, ever since Obama won that election. But even before that, because when the media kept putting out, and this year there are more minorities, the country is going to be more minorities, it's going to be less white people, and so they started putting this fear in other people as far as what is happening to the earth. And then people who think that they're privileged and they're entitled more so than we are, basically is saying, we can have them Black people in charge. We can have, all kinds of crazy fears come up in people when you try to promote something. And then this whistle person, and I can't even say the name, number 45, and starts putting out those signals to people to get ready, because that's what they're attempting or going to try to do, as far as this is what they've been preparing for. This is what they want to try to do. This is how they want to try to come at this country and tear it apart. We ain't letting that happen, because I made sure my family got ready. Just be very careful where you step up on, because we're not letting that happen. Not in our communities, not in this country, not on this earth. So that's what he's attempting to do. But I think Americans have some common sense. When I woke up the day that he got elected, I had a gut punch saying, I knew there was racist people in the country that I was born into, but I didn't think my country was racist until that day. Now you see the effects of it, because now those undercover was under the rock bigots, and I wish Matthew Fogg was on here so he can do his bigot with badges. Those bigots are coming out thinking it's okay to show your racist attitude, your bigotry towards people who haven't done nothing but built this country for free most of the time. And so, yes, they're attempting to do that. But we know that there are common sense people of all race that's not going to let that happen.
That's right.
Well, one thing we got to remember, militias aren't anything new. They've had militias in this country since the beginning of time. But the mindset that has allowed them to believe that they are having or getting support from the federal government, from the president this time, is emboldening them to come out and do what they want to do and say what they want to say. I mean, when you're president, and when I mean I mean the president of this country, not your specific president, but when your president makes a statement that is supported by a group like the poor boys, whatever they want to call themselves, you know that this nation has a problem. And unless we support our community the way that they're supporting that president, then we're going to have a problem. But I think that the minds of our people are starting to awaken. I think that we are developing a strong, solid position of support for each other. Well, I think that we, as you said, you got your family ready. I think that there are many people in our community that are doing the same thing and getting their families ready.
Yeah. But what's also unfortunate about this, Reddy, did you want to say something?
Go ahead, brother. I'll follow you.
Okay, I'll be quick. What's also unfortunate about this, we not only have to worry about our president, what about the white senators, Republican senators, Republican Congress people who are not criticizing him? This is a man who said that he may not accept the election result if he don't win. And you don't hear anything. So we have these poor boys, and we have these extremist groups, we have these rednecks out in the all of these little places. But you have co-conspirators with him that are elected officials who are saying absolutely nothing. Of course, they want, white people have always been afraid of genetic annihilation. That's been a preoccupation of theirs for generations. We had our sister talk about that in ISIS papers. But what this president is saying and what this president is doing is not only being co-signed by these extremist groups, but the silence from senators and Congress people is baffling, because their silence, they're co-signing whatever he's saying and whatever he's doing. For a president of the United States to say that he may not accept the results of an election in the United States of America.
Man, look, Donald Trump is a physical coward who dodged the draft 5 times. Let me repeat that. Donald Trump is a physical coward who dodged the draft 5 times to avoid the fight. What he likes to do is try to delegate violence to like-minded racists. What he's going to see is that thing is not going to unfold in the way that he may anticipate, because as Sister Rochelle said, this is not 1865, man. This is not 1965. No one is going to stand by and accept random violence committed in our communities against individuals, families, whoever it is. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But to your point, Brother Noel, this is all part of the language and actions of a dying white supremacy in this country. White supremacy is on its deathbed, man. This is their last round. And they are rallying everyone to the preservation of white male supremacy in this country, upon which the country was founded They know it's falling down. They know the demographic is changing. That's why Trump campaigned essentially on a campaign to restore white supremacy to its full potency. When he comes down the escalator and said, hey, everybody, I'll stop all these black and brown people, vote for me. And they did, in response to the election of the first black president in the history of this country. What we're going to see is the determination and collected effort of people all over this country from every walk of life and every race, beat that bullshit down. And if you think you want it in the streets, let's hope it doesn't come to that. But believe, man, there are people who are prepared to give it to you as well in the streets and wherever it is. Saner, more rational, humane thinking is what's required in this moment. If we can't have that, then we could be in for some difficult days ahead.
You know, as I think about the upcoming election, I think about these lifetime judicial appointments. You know, Lil Tink Tink was bragging during the debate about the 300 judges. And, you know, these are all allegedly card-carrying, dyed-in-the-wool clansfolk who are on these benches for life. And now he has the potential to put a 48-year-old woman who is going to strip on November the 10th, the Affordable Care Act, maybe Roe v. Wade, and whatever else she can do over the next 40 plus years if she's blessed with longevity like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This stuff is going to affect not only our children, but our grandchildren. And I think it's so important for people to be willing, Black folks, and I say this all the time, and I know there's some folks in here that's going to lose their shit right now, but white people will hold their nose. They will hold their nose and do something that is not even in their best judgment, but because they have a Klanman in the White House who is making appointments, that's what they wanted. That's why he's there. And so they'll let him get away with all this other foolishness. And I think that's why so many of them are quiet. Certainly Turtle Boy, you know, was excited about the possibility of another Supreme Court appointee and was trying to shove this woman down our throat. And so they're willing to let him continue to be batshit crazy in public because he's doing this thing that's going to affect us for generations.
So I think it's important that we remember that Black people have always survived in the worst of conditions in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And we must be, the reason that we're here now is in defense of our sister, but also in defending her, we're defending ourselves. We must be clear to understand that we have to build these networks. We have to build more Black Wall Streets. We have to make sure that we're well connected across the country, because not only for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children and those yet unborn. We have to, I think Noel talked about economics. We've not talked about what we do collectively with our money and how we utilize it as a weapon, not only to protect ourselves, but to defend ourselves against the enemy. We give folks our money to beat us with. We have to be clear about that. We have to build our own enclaves in our community. Why are we not buying up the abandoned buildings in and around our community and fortifying it? I know when I started getting the death threats like Sergeant Sgt Dorsey is getting, I used to tell folks, come to my neighborhood. I guarantee you won't get off the block. Because I'm on a dead end street. I said, I live in a cul-de-sac, but if it was in the suburbs, it'd be a cul-de-sac. In the hood, it's a dead end street, which means that you don't get to drive through, okay? We're like raid, okay? Once you come rent the motel, once you come in, you don't get out. So if you come up my block talking about you coming to see me, I'm calling the little dudes on the corner, the drug dealers, and they calling the next group of people, and we're going to lock the block down. Because you're not going to come to my hood talking about taking me off in my own neighborhood. Not going to happen. And so I say it flippantly, but we have to defend our community. When I walk with the sheriff, everybody in Philadelphia knows the sheriff. Like her or loathe her, they all know her. We hit New York streets, everybody knows 100 Blacks in law enforcement. And I'm sure it's the same in LA for you and the same for Reddick in Missouri. And so we've got to build that out in our community and defend it. We haven't done that well. I often apologize to the young people, the generations behind us, and say we have failed. And we fail because you're disconnected from us, you're disconnected from the history, and you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing, because many of us and those in front of us have not done what they're supposed to do. We got to make a change, and we only have us, so we have to defend us.
Amen, Pastor.
Lord.
I really appreciate you guys coming and just sharing your thoughts about all of what's going on right now. And listen, because police are stupid and the gift they keep on giving, we'll have an opportunity to revisit this, get together again. I see many of the kinfolk in the chat are asking that we can come together again and just talk in a real way, because they don't get to hear this. They only get to hear, folks like Tim Scott, who's not sure if Trump really said what he said because he thinks maybe he misspoke, or folks who have platforms on YouTube who speak very differently from us. And so I'm just happy that I have an opportunity to bring some real kinfolk together, let the family hear and know that we're here, number one. Number two, that we are doing what we can. We can't do it alone. We need you, not to get mad today and tomorrow and go on social media and fuss and cuss, but to really roll up your sleeves. Don't be lazy. Get involved, get engaged, and let's start trying to make a difference now. Because if we continue to do nothing, I promise you nothing will change, right?
That's right.
Please, get out and vote. Get out and vote.
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote. I say take your cousin. It's on you. Dinner's on you that day. Take them all.
Yeah.
This is about your life and death. We have to decide how we want to live our lives moving forward. And I definitely know you don't want to be involved with the crap that we've been seeing in the past 3 years. Get out and vote, people. This is real.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Real quick, Cheryl, I just want to say, Sean Hannity over there at Fox News, sit your ignorant ass down. So you want to shut up, your ignorant ass.
So what
Well,
I just want to,
those who've been following me, my day one family already know I try to be PC, and I will, I'm a cop, so you guys know I will cuss a motherfucker out if I have to, right? And I say all the time, I'm taught well by LAPD, and I really have no fucks to give about Sean Hannity and anybody else. All of y'all who came for me last week, I appreciate you, because what you've done is you've raised my level. You have made me known in places that I wasn't known. I was trending on Twitter last week. What? And so while you meant to hurt me, you actually helped me. And now you know that there's a whole tribe of folks who look like me, who talk like me, and we are ready to get at you. I promise you, you do not want the smoke. I promise you.
And we promise you, you don't want the smoke. Like I said from the beginning, come closer. Be for her. And so if you go to her, you got to come through all of us. And we're saying this in sincerity. We are card-carrying members. Trust us. You go after her, you got to come after all of us.
Absolutely.
Y'all got your cards?
Yes,
Card-carrying
we do.
members.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
That's what I'm talking about.
And my gun cleaning kit.
Lock and load.
That part. See, they forget. Like you said, Rochelle, they forget we got the same damn training they got.
Same training.
You need to
Same
know.
training.
Yeah, you need to know.
Over these years, we've even gotten more.
Kwame Ture said our people aren't poor, we just poorly organized. The key word,
Yes.
organize. The attack against our people is an organized attack. We have to be equally organized. If you don't know an organization to join, then start one. But everybody under the sound of our voices should belong to something that is specifically designed to uplift and strengthen African people in this country and across the diaspora. Organize.
And make sure you be educatedly organized to get the right education. We want to commend Sgt Dorsey for the fact that she's bringing you the right communication here, and the fact that we here, and I could share the fact that when I come from the African village, we talk about Ma'at, which Ma'at is truth, justice, righteousness, balance, peace, harmony, and divine right order. And that's what we here stand for. We're about the right order. When we talk about white supremacy, we call it white fragility, because they're not supreme to none of us here. They're fragile, and they're definitely scared, and they want to continuously maintain the order that they've had throughout the years. Dr. DeLacy, prior to this presentation here, he sent out an order in the sense, the legend of Brass Creek, how police turn a black man into a villain to save themselves. I just read that, Dr. Lacey, and the fact that they are still trying to maintain that system, and we have to understand they will lie and cheat and do all they can, and because we are here, we are letting you know that they do not abide by the rules. You know, so when we talk about, when we call up our shining prince, by any means necessary, they will lie and cheat to maintain that system and to stay in power, right? So we understand that Frederick Douglass said, power sees nothing else but power. And this is us right here, as far as the coalition that is here today. We are trying to educate you on how to be powerful and not being misguided and misled. So thank y'all all for sharing. I enjoyed this platform, Cheryl Dorsey, for sharing this, and look forward to when we can come out again and do this again. This is a wonderful thing.
Y'all know I got.
Everybody's got schedules, so we'll work it out. We'll coordinate. Go ahead.
I gotta just play you a little bit of our theme song, as far as the Harriet Tubman song. We taking our people to where they need to go, and so listen to it. It's called Stand Up. Here it comes. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Bullet in my gun.